using experience level agreements. How are you today, Sami?
Very good, thank you.
Brilliant.
All right, let's get things running. Sorry. That is not a bad thing to show our product there in background, but that was not what I was aiming to do. And hopefully getting the camera up and running. All right. Hey, great to be here, and thank you, Scarlett. And it was really interesting to listen to Jeff, and I think there are a couple of things that I will continue the same kind of area, what he already started. So Sami Kallio, CEO and founder of HappySignals, and HappySignals is a company helping enterprises to measure end-user experience for whole of IT. So we started from the service management area, but now we are measuring the whole, everything what we are providing from IT to the end users. And when doing all that, I think there is one slogan that we start to use more and more. So what we aim to is helping the whole ecosystem and our customers to really hear more of this. So thanks to IT, I was able to do something. I think you all have heard very many times that because of IT, something didn't happen. And that is still quite often the situation. But really making what we do from the perspective how it feels for the end users and making them happy and making them more efficient. So first I want to start this presentation from, let's say, good news. COVID hit us about a year ago or almost 1.5 years ago. And during that time, our customers has been able to increase the happiness to end users by 12%. And during this time, that is a huge, huge result. And I think that has kind of been an overall situation, but we are proud that we have been able to help our customers even in these hard times to get that kind of a result. And that is kind of, I wanted to start with that one because showing that, yes, if you focus on the experience, you really can make a difference and you can really make your end users happier, even in this kind of a situation. And that is kind of a thing that this whole thing, experience management, might first thing, and then listen to the customers really might feel that there is so much pressure on it and that is a hard thing to do and so on. But kind of it is, but still it is making the things we do in IT more motivating. And that is making people more kind of focus on this one when they understand that, yes, we can make a difference. And now the end users, the business is more happy with the services and the reputation of IT is getting better and better. But really the kind of title of my presentation today was humans are the best sensors. What I mean by that is that your employees, they really will tell you honestly how they feel about the services, how you are able to help them, how you are able to make them more productive. You don't have to configure them after some applications are updated or you change the ways you work in service management. They will still honestly tell how they feel. Or let's say you change totally your service desk provider. They will still tell you how they felt about it, and you can think about what is really the quality of your service and how you should be developing that. We started the company by doing that support services, so IT support, finance and HR and so on. So all the enterprise service management areas, of course, mainly IT, but all of them anyway. But we realized at some point that it seems to be that, yes, I do agree with Jeff very heavily that the IT support service has the biggest influence. If you look at all of these areas, the support services has the biggest influence on the reputation of IT. I think that is based on because there is a human touch. They are talking with you people, you are helping them. There's a personal connection quite often. All the other touch points are mainly based on IT, using the application, using the devices and so on. But they are touch points that are totally creating the experience for that end user. Now, when thinking about the whole thing, so we started from the ticket-based, and in ticket-based, of course, it is done after things are resolved and so on. But typical organizations nowadays are doing the rest of this picture on yearly-based surveys. And we do believe that that doesn't really work anymore. And really, really good example of that is that think about a company who did that yearly survey of IT quality December 2019. February 2020, that was unuseful anymore. So you need to understand, okay, I hope that kind of changes, that huge changes don't happen all the time, but you are updating your application set, you are doing digital transformation, you are maybe changing some of the vendors. So if you look at the whole field here, there is always change going on. There is always changes happening. And those guys, your employees, are feeling the good things and bad things. And your task is really, from our perspective, to listen to them and help them to be using the tool sets and getting the support they need. I want to still continue on the remote work because now we have been measuring that from the February last year. And again, has been quite interesting to follow the whole customer base. I think we have now about 350,000 feedbacks from the remote work globally. And that is coming from, I think, about 50 of our customers. And in that, the first months was about technical things like VPN not working. So people were not so happy. The remote working was not working so well. The score was about 30. And now the score is about 70. But first VPN, then during summer, some technical other issues. Then during autumn, typically things like, I do have a better workstation at the office, but I don't have 2 screens now at home. But now during this year, it's getting softer and softer, so missing the colleagues and the cooperation is harder and so on. So why I'm telling this story is that remember that the experience or expectation of your end users are evolving all the time. So from that perspective as well, you have to do this content so you start to understand what is going on and how really you are able to help those end users. This picture is really key for today's presentation, so still one point from it. Now when looking at that end user in the middle, don't think that only as one individual. Think about that as a group of your end users. So how we see the whole experience is that you can look at it from the perspective of, let's say, your sales guys, or people working in your retail stores, or people working at the headquarters. So you can look at the whole experience always, or you should be looking at it from the business perspective, taking a certain group of people that what are really the most critical application from the perspective of this end user group? What are the most critical support services for these guys? Because there are services that, let's say, even the calendar time, if it takes 5 days, it doesn't really matter. And then there are areas where certain groups of people are really critical and 2 hours just is too much. But that understanding will help you to really work proactively with your customers, those business users. So when you go and meet the business leaders, you can go in there, hey, this is the whole picture. This is how your employees are feeling about the services. These are the pain points. And now proactively, we have started to do these and these improvements. So always measuring end user experience, you need to have a model how you really use that data. Otherwise, it's just bothering the people. So of course, the overall score where you are is important. But for us, it is even more important to find those areas what you can develop and focus on those. I think what Jeff said in the presentation that this whole thing makes the IT more efficient if you focus on experience. I do agree with that one as well, because what happens there is that even though, yes, you analyze more things, but you then focus on things that really matter. So you're not running because somebody said something to everything what is going on, but you can really focus on these things that matter for your end users, and in that way, bring more value to the business. Also, quite often, people are asking us that what is really the return of investment when you are talking about happiness and you're making the end users happier and so on. Yes, we are big company and big hard company, but the real thing, the real business case really is the productivity of the end users. So not only the people in IT are more efficient, but even more people using the services get more productive. So what we do typically is, or not typically, we do it always, we measure always also the productivity side. So let's say an IT incident, so IT tickets, lost productivity per ticket is little less than 3 hours per ticket. But best companies only losing a bit more than 1 hour per ticket, the other end more than 8 hours per ticket. So you really can by making end users more efficient, making your service more efficient, make also the end users more productive. So for us, for example, the cost of ticket is the combination of the IT cost and the lost productivity on business side. And using these 2 numbers, you start to find those areas that you really should be focusing on. And what are the most critical services, for example, in service desk. But how this really works, so yes, managing IT is not getting easier, it is getting harder because the demand and the kind of expectation level is getting harder and harder from the end user side. How we do and how we think about really about the experience management is this quite simple picture. First of all, when you start to do experience management, you start to focus more on experiences. The first step, of course, is to measure and continuously measure the experiences. In our case, what you do is you just select the areas you want to measure, and then you start to measure your end user experience in whatever areas you need that data. And that is the easy part. Those are already-made surveys, and it takes a couple of weeks to get it up and running. The first thing that starts to be more towards changing your culture is sharing that data. And I cannot underline enough how important the sharing the data openly to your teams, people, and partners is, because only by doing that, you start to create a common trust on this is something we should be focusing on. This is something that we can influence. And when you start to share it, quite often what we see is that people get motivated, because now they understand why they are doing things like implementing a new version of some applications or doing even the support services. They understand what is the value to the end user. Identify, meaning that you start to find those development areas. But I believe that first you should be doing the sharing even before you start to identify those areas, because then you start to have people understanding and doing cooperation, because quite often experience of certain services is a sum of cooperation with different teams in your IT and also with your vendors. Then after you have identified something, you have made the improvements, then following them up and seeing really what was the business value and celebrating the success in there. And this is kind of course, a circle that you should be doing continuously. The thing that I could talk about an hour or two is how this changes the way of working for different roles in IT. CIO of Campari, Chris Wood, said it maybe the best from the perspective of IT directors, that for him, HappySignals is the same thing than CRM is for sales directors. And that should be going for other products that you can use in this area as well. The point is that it is really showing how things are going. And when this guy meets the business side, he can really talk with their language. Okay, these are the areas that we are now developing, and those are the areas that you are now suffering about. If you go then to the agent part, even the agent's work changes dramatically when you start to really focus on the experience. Because typically these guys are measured by how many tickets you close per hour. And that is not so motivating, but if the main measurement is how happy, how did you help the end users, it starts to be much more motivating for them. And that makes it more interesting to come to work and kind of understand how they should be working differently. And also team leads in service management and service desk. It is of course much more nice to go to meet the business when you know how they are feeling, and you don't always have to defend your services. Or if you have to, then you know what you also have to develop. A bit same thing on this picture. So our steps to experience management or end user centric culture: start to measure, start to be transparent, start to set the targets. So typically these 3 steps takes already about 1 year or 1.5 years. So don't try to jump directly to changing the kind of agreement stuff. XLAs is a good thing and great thing that when we start to change this to be the main thing in the agreements or set that kind of a KPIs and scorecards that we just saw from Jeff. But what we think is that you first have to start to understand, start to trust the data together with different people. Then it's time for you to start to really do that target setting or KPIs, because then you know that you can influence those things. And in the end, of course, you can be really end user centric culture in your IT. Couple of customer cases here so that you can see that yes, it is a big change from the traditional SLAs and traditional ways of measuring IT to really focus on experience. But here are a couple of cases what might happen if you really start to do that. So in the scale in these pictures is about 8 months to 16 months. So you can really see that how the scores has been going up with these reference cases of ours. Some of these customers have their cases. They are telling their story in our webpage, what really they have done to get those scores up. but that is kind of something that you can see from our web pages. So go to HappySignals.com and customer cases. There are several cases with customer telling their story. On the other hand, you can find there the XLA guide, the practical guide to XLAs, which is a bit more deep dive to the experience area than I was able to do in this 15 minutes time. But now, thank you for this opportunity, and happy, of course, to answer any questions if there are.
Thanks, Sami. We don't have any questions at the moment, but if anyone does have any questions, what's the best way to reach you?
Sami.Kallio@HappySignals or LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn might be easier to find Sami Kallio and then send a message to me and ask.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time today.
No problem.
Okay, have a great rest of your day and rest of your week.
Thank you. Thank you, Scarlett.